The storm hit Korath Station with the fury of an angry god, sending sheets of metallic rain against the viewports and making the entire structure groan under atmospheric pressure that shouldn't have existed this far out in the void. Captain Rex Morgan sealed the last of the external airlocks and activated the emergency weather protocols, hoping his small supply depot could ride out whatever cosmic phenomenon was battering the forgotten trading post. Rex had chosen Korath Station precisely because it was forgotten, a minor way station on the galaxy's outer rim where refugees, drifters, and people who preferred to avoid official attention could resupply before vanishing back into the darkness between stars. His operation was modest but profitable, basic necessities, ship repairs, and no questions asked about where his customers had come from or where they were heading. The storm's electromagnetic interference played havoc with his sensors, so Rex didn't detect the approaching shuttle until it was practically on top of the station. The vessel limped toward his docking bay trailing plasma and sparks, its hull scarred by what looked like weapons fire. Rex activated the emergency landing protocols and pressurized the bay, then grabbed his medical kit and emergency supplies. The shuttle's occupant emerged slowly, moving with the careful deliberation of someone fighting pain and exhaustion. She wore a hooded cloak that had seen better days, the fabric torn and stained with soot that spoke of hasty evacuation from some kind of disaster. Rex could see pale silver skin and the elongated ears that marked her as Celestrian, but her modest clothing and humble demeanor suggested a refugee rather than one of the wealthy traders or nobles he occasionally encountered. "Easy there," Rex said, moving to support her as she swayed on her feet. "You've had a rough trip. Let's get you inside where it's warm." "Thank you," she replied, her voice carrying the musical tones typical of her species but roughened by fatigue. "I wasn't certain I would find safe harbor before my ship's systems failed completely." Rex guided her to the depot's small medical bay, noting the way she favored her left shoulder and the careful way she moved that suggested other injuries beneath the concealing cloak. "What happened? Pirates? System failure?" "Mining accident," she said simply, settling onto the examination table with obvious relief. "There was an explosion at the asteroid facility where I worked. I managed to reach an escape shuttle, but the damage was extensive." Rex nodded, accepting the explanation without pushing for details. The frontier was full of people fleeing various disasters, and their stories were usually variations on familiar themes: accidents, conflicts, economic collapses that left entire communities scrambling for survival. "I'm Rex Morgan," he said, beginning his assessment of her injuries. "This is my depot. Nothing fancy, but I've got supplies, medical equipment, and a safe place to rest while you figure out your next move." "Lyanna," she replied, offering no family name or origin details. "I'm grateful for your kindness to a stranger." As Rex cleaned the worst of the soot from her shoulder injury, he noticed details that didn't quite fit her story of being a simple mining worker. Her hands were soft, showing no signs of the calluses and scars that came from manual labor. Her teeth were perfect, suggesting access to advanced medical care throughout her life. Most tellingly, her posture and bearing, even exhausted and injured, carried a natural authority that spoke of education and privilege. "You sure you were working the mines?" he asked gently, applying antiseptic to a plasma burn on her shoulder. "Your hands don't look like someone who's spent much time with industrial equipment." Lyanna glanced down at her palms as though seeing them for the first time. "Administrative work, mostly. I handled logistics and supply coordination rather than physical labor." The explanation sounded reasonable, and Rex had learned not to pry too deeply into his customers' backgrounds. The frontier attracted people running from all kinds of circumstances, and their reasons for seeking anonymity were usually none of his business. "This is going to sting," he warned, beginning to clean the worst of her injuries. "The burn's not too deep, but it'll need proper dressing to prevent infection." Lyanna endured the treatment with remarkable composure, watching Rex work with an intensity that made him slightly self-conscious. Most patients either looked away or maintained nervous conversation during medical procedures, but she observed his technique with what appeared to be professional interest. "You're very skilled," she commented as he finished bandaging her shoulder. "Your training was clearly thorough." Frontier medicine, Rex replied with a shrug. You learn to handle everything from plasma burns to exotic alien parasites when you're the only medical facility for 3-star systems. Not elegant, but it gets the job done. Elegant enough, Lyanna said, testing the mobility of her treated shoulder. The care is both competent and gentle. Your patients are fortunate. There was something in her tone, a quality of judgment that suggested experience with medical treatment of the highest caliber. Rex found himself wondering what kind of administrative work would give a mining logistics coordinator access to advanced medical care. You can rest here tonight, he offered, activating the medical bay's privacy screens. Tomorrow we can figure out transportation to wherever you're heading. I don't have much to offer in payment, Lyanna said, concern creeping into her musical voice. The evacuation was hurried. I have some credits, but not enough to fully compensate you for your generosity. Rex waved off her concerns. Don't worry about it. The frontier takes care of its own. Besides, you look like you've been through enough without worrying about medical bills. The relief in Lyanna's expression was genuine and touching. Rex had the impression that she wasn't accustomed to kindness offered without expectation of return, which struck him as sad in ways he couldn't quite articulate. Is there anything else you need? He asked, checking the medical bay's environmental controls. Food, clean water, communication access to contact family or friends. Some food would be appreciated, if it's not too much trouble. As for communication. Lyanna paused, considering. Perhaps it would be better to wait. I'm not certain who might be monitoring transmissions, and I'd prefer to remain unnoticed for now. Rex nodded, understanding the sentiment. Many of his customers preferred to avoid official attention for various reasons, and he'd learned not to ask uncomfortable questions about their circumstances. I'll bring you something to eat and let you rest, he said, heading toward the door. If you need anything during the night, just call out. I'll hear you. As he prepared a simple meal in his depot's small kitchen, Rex found himself puzzling over his unexpected guest. Lyanna's story was plausible enough. Mining accidents were common in the Outer Rim territories, and the economic pressures that drove people to dangerous extraction work often left them vulnerable when things went wrong. But something about her didn't quite add up. Her manner of speaking, her natural composure, the way she observed everything around her with calculating intelligence, these suggested someone with education and experience far beyond what her humble story would indicate. Still, the frontier was full of people reinventing themselves, running from pasts that might be complicated, dangerous, or simply too painful to acknowledge. Rex had built his reputation on providing services without judgment, and he wasn't about to compromise that policy for the sake of curiosity. When he returned to the medical bay with food and clean water, he found Lyanna studying the depot supply manifests on his public terminal, her expression suggesting someone accustomed to analyzing complex logistics data. Finding everything you need? He asked, setting the meal beside her. Your operation is more sophisticated than it initially appeared, she replied, accepting the food with gracious thanks. The supply routing, the inventory management, the customer service protocols, everything shows careful planning and professional competence. Rex felt a flush of pride at her assessment. He'd worked hard to build his depot into something reliable and trustworthy, and recognition from someone who clearly understood such matters was surprisingly gratifying. It's taken years to get the systems running smoothly, he admitted. But I like helping people, and doing it right means they'll come back when they need supplies again. A sound business philosophy, Lyanna agreed, then paused as though considering whether to say more. Though I suspect your motivation goes beyond simple profit. What do you mean? Lyanna's silver eyes met his with surprising directness. You could have charged me for the medical treatment, demanded payment up front, or simply refused to help someone who couldn't immediately compensate you. Instead, you offered assistance freely and with genuine concern for my welfare. That suggests character rather than mere business acumen. Rex felt heat rise in his cheeks at her frank assessment. The frontier's tough enough without people turning away those in need. We all help each other out here, it's how we survive. As Lyanna settled down to rest, Rex couldn't shake the feeling that there was far more to his mysterious guest than her modest story revealed. But whatever secrets she carried, whatever circumstances had brought her to his depot during a cosmic storm, he was committed to providing the same assistance he offered to any traveler in need. After all, in the vast darkness between stars, kindness was often the only light that mattered. Rex woke the next morning to find Lyanna already awake, standing at the depot's main viewport watching the last of the storm's electromagnetic disturbances fade into the cosmic background. She'd somehow managed to clean and repair her cloak during the night, and though it remained simple in design, she wore it with a natural grace that made even humble clothing seem elegant. Feeling better, he asked, checking the environmental readouts that showed the storm had passed and normal operations could resume. Much better, thank you. Your medical care was excellent, and the rest was exactly what I needed. Lyanna turned from the viewport, and Rex noticed that her silver eyes seemed brighter, more alert than they had the previous evening. I was wondering if I might be able to assist with your operations while I'm here. To help offset the cost of your hospitality. Rex paused in his morning routine, considering the offer. Most refugees were content to rest and recover before moving on, but Lyanna seemed genuinely interested in contributing rather than simply receiving assistance. I appreciate the offer, but depot work isn't exactly skilled labor. Mostly inventory management, basic maintenance, customer service, nothing that requires special training. Perhaps you'd be surprised, Lyanna replied with a smile that carried hints of secrets she wasn't ready to share. I have some experience with logistics and supply chain management. Over the course of the morning, Rex discovered that Lyanna's claim was a dramatic understatement. She reviewed his inventory systems with the eye of someone who understood complex organizational principles, suggested modifications to his storage protocols that would improve efficiency by nearly 20%, and identified supply route optimizations that could reduce his operational costs significantly. Where did you learn this? Rex asked, watching her redesign his shipping manifest organization with casual competence that bordered on professional expertise. Administrative work exposes you to many different aspects of operations management, she replied diplomatically. Mining operations require sophisticated logistics to function efficiently, especially in remote locations. Rex accepted the explanation, though privately he wondered what kind of mining operation required the level of expertise Lyanna was demonstrating. Her suggestions showed understanding of galactic trade regulations, interspecies commerce protocols, and supply chain dynamics that seemed far beyond what a typical facility administrator would encounter. This routing modification you suggested, he said, reviewing her work on his shipping schedules, how did you know about the seasonal variations in the Helix Nebula transport lanes? Lyanna paused, seeming to realize she'd revealed knowledge that didn't fit her cover story. The mining facility I worked for shipped materials through that route regularly. You learn to pay attention to patterns when delays can cost significant profits. As the day progressed, Rex found himself increasingly impressed by Lyanna's capabilities. She approached every task with quiet efficiency, asked thoughtful questions about his operations, and offered insights that revealed deep understanding of commercial logistics. But more than her technical competence, he was struck by her manner, patient, considerate, and genuinely interested in understanding how his depot functioned. You don't have to work, he told her during a break in the afternoon. You're recovering from injuries and a traumatic experience. Rest is important. I prefer to stay busy, Lyanna replied, continuing to organize supply manifests with methodical precision. And I find your operation fascinating. The way you've structured everything to serve such a diverse clientele while maintaining efficiency. It's impressive work. Rex felt a flush of pride at her assessment. Building the depot had been a labor of love, requiring years of trial and error to develop systems that could handle the complex needs of frontier customers. Recognition from someone who clearly understood such challenges was more gratifying than he'd expected. It's taken time to get everything running smoothly, he admitted. Customers out here have unusual requirements, and you have to be flexible to serve them properly. Flexibility paired with underlying structure, Lyanna observed, reviewing his customer service protocols. You provide personalized assistance while maintaining consistent quality standards. That requires careful balance. Her analysis was more sophisticated than Rex had expected, revealing understanding of business management principles that suggested education far beyond what her mining facility story would indicate. But when he asked about her background, she deflected with gentle humor and changed the subject to depot operations. By the third day, Lyanna had become an integral part of the depot's daily routine. She handled customer inquiries with diplomatic skill, managed inventory updates with remarkable efficiency, and even assisted with minor equipment maintenance tasks that revealed mechanical aptitude well beyond amateur level. "You're sure you worked in mining administration?" Rex asked, watching her adjust a complex atmospheric recycling unit with the confidence of someone who understood the technology thoroughly. "I've always been curious about how things work," she replied, making a minor calibration that improved the system's efficiency by several percentage points. "Administrative work gave me access to technical documentation for various systems." Rex was beginning to suspect that Lyanna's story, while not necessarily false, was incomplete in significant ways. Her knowledge base was too broad, her skills too refined, her natural authority too pronounced for someone who had spent her career in minor administrative roles. But he'd learned to respect people's privacy, and if she preferred to maintain her modest persona, that was her choice. What impressed him most wasn't her competence, though that was remarkable, but her genuine interest in understanding his work and her obvious respect for what he'd accomplished. She asked detailed questions about his customer relationships, his supply chain partnerships, and his long-term business goals with the focused attention of someone who genuinely cared about the answers. "Why did you choose this location?" she asked during an evening meal, gesturing toward the viewport where distant stars provided the only illumination in the vast emptiness surrounding Koroth Station. "Privacy, mostly," Rex admitted. "The frontier attracts people who value discretion, and serving them well means respecting their desire for anonymity. Out here, we can provide that without interference from central authorities. And you enjoy helping people who might not receive assistance elsewhere?" Rex considered the question carefully. Everyone deserves access to basic supplies and services, regardless of their circumstances or background. The frontier can be harsh enough without people turning away those in need. Lyanna's expression grew thoughtful at his answer. "That's a generous philosophy. Not everyone would prioritize service over profit in such circumstances." "Profit follows good service," Rex replied with a shrug. "Treat people fairly, provide quality goods, and they'll come back when they need supplies again. Besides, the frontier takes care of its own, it's how we all survive out here." As they prepared for another night, Rex realized how much he'd come to enjoy Lyanna's company. Her intelligence, curiosity, and natural warmth made even routine tasks more interesting, while her insights had genuinely improved his operations in ways that would benefit future customers. "How long were you planning to stay?" he asked, trying to keep the question casual despite his growing reluctance to see her leave. "I'm not certain," Lyanna replied, her expression becoming distant. "My situation is complicated. I need to consider my options carefully before deciding on my next destination." Rex nodded, understanding that people fleeing difficult circumstances often needed time to plan their next moves. He was content to provide sanctuary while she sorted through whatever challenges had brought her to his depot. What he didn't know was that across the galaxy, the most powerful military forces in known space were mobilizing to search for their missing empress, and that his simple act of kindness had connected him to events that would reshape the balance of galactic power. For now, it was enough that Lyanna seemed to be healing, both physically and emotionally, in the safety of his modest depot among the stars. On the fourth morning, Rex's long-range sensors detected something that made his blood run cold, a fleet of ships approaching Koroth Station with drive signatures that belonged to vessels far beyond the usual frontier traffic. The lead ship's energy output suggested military-grade propulsion systems, while the escort formation spoke of coordination that only came from extensive training and unlimited resources. "Lyanna," he called, activating the depot's emergency protocols while trying to keep the alarm from his voice. "We might have a problem. There's a fleet heading our way, and they don't look like typical customers. Lyanna appeared from the supply bay where she'd been organizing inventory, moving with the fluid grace he'd come to associate with her natural elegance. But something in her expression had changed, a subtle shift from humble refugee to someone who seemed unsurprised by the approaching vessels. "What kind of ships?" she asked, though her tone suggested she might already know the answer. Rex consulted his sensor displays, comparing the incoming signatures against his database of known vessel types. Military configuration, advanced defensive systems, propulsion technology that's at least 20 years ahead of anything I've seen in the Outer Rim territories. He paused, checking the identification transponders. "Rex, they're broadcasting Celestrian Royal Navy codes." The words hung in the air between them like an unexploded bomb. The Celestrian Royal Navy served only one person in the entire galaxy, and their presence at a remote frontier depot could mean only one thing: someone of extraordinary importance was either aboard those ships or was the object of their search. Lyanna moved to the viewport, studying the approaching fleet with the calm assessment of someone who knew exactly what she was looking at. How many vessels? 12 ships in the primary formation, with what looks like additional squadrons holding position at the edge of sensor range. Rex's voice carried the strain of someone trying to process implications that defied his understanding of normal frontier operations. "Lyanna, this is the kind of military response you see when..." He stopped mid-sentence as the full weight of realization hit him. The approaching fleet, Lyanna's sophisticated knowledge of logistics and trade routes, her natural authority and impossible competence at everything she attempted, the way she carried herself despite her humble clothing, pieces of an impossible puzzle clicked into place with devastating clarity. "When someone very important goes missing," Lyanna finished gently, turning from the viewport to meet his stunned gaze. The communication array activated without Rex's input, broadcasting formal approach requests using diplomatic protocols he'd never encountered in his years of frontier operations. The voice that emerged from his speakers carried the crisp precision of military command authority. "Korath Station, this is Admiral Thane Starweaver commanding His Imperial Majesty's ship Constellation. We are conducting a search and rescue operation under direct royal mandate. Prepare for immediate inspection and cooperation with Imperial investigators." Rex stared at the communication panel, then at Lyanna, who stood beside the viewport with a composure that seemed to radiate natural command presence. "Search and rescue operation," he repeated numbly. "They're looking for someone." "Yes," Lyanna said simply. "They're looking for me." The words should have been impossible to believe, but too many details suddenly made perfect sense. The knowledge that seemed far beyond her claimed background, the natural authority that survived even exhaustion and injury, the way she analyzed his operations with the insight of someone accustomed to managing enterprises on a galactic scale. "You're not a mining administrator," Rex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No. Though I have toured mining facilities extensively, so that part of my story was technically accurate." Lyanna's smile carried gentle amusement and something that might have been apology. "I am Empress Lyanna Celestis, sovereign of the Celestrian Empire, protector of 47 star systems, and apparently the cause of significant military mobilization." The introduction hit Rex like a physical blow. Empress Lyanna Celestis was arguably the most powerful individual in the known galaxy, ruler of an empire that spanned dozens of star systems and controlled trade routes that connected thousands of worlds. Her face appeared on currency, her policies shaped the lives of billions of beings, and her decisions could alter the balance of galactic power. And he had been treating her like a refugee fleeing a mining accident. "I gave you food," he said stupidly, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of what had occurred. "I patched your shoulder with a basic first aid kit." "And it was exactly what I needed," Lyanna replied warmly. "Your kindness and skill were perfect, Rex. More perfect than you realize." The royal fleet was now close enough that Rex could see individual ships through his viewports, sleek vessels whose hull design spoke of cutting-edge technology and unlimited construction budgets. The lead ship was a masterwork of naval architecture, its crystalline hull sections catching and refracting starlight in patterns that were both beautiful and intimidating. Your Majesty, Rex began formally, then stopped as Lyanna raised her hand with gentle authority. Please, continue calling me Lyanna. The past few days have been illuminating. I've learned things about frontier operations and the character of our citizens that no official report could have provided. Rex tried to organize his thoughts around questions that seemed both crucial and impossible to ask. The mining accident was real, though not at a typical extraction facility. I was conducting an inspection tour of industrial operations in the Outer Rim when saboteurs attacked my transport. The explosion forced an evacuation in damaged shuttles, and I ended up here when my ship's navigation systems failed. The explanation filled in gaps in her story while raising new questions about the political implications of an assassination attempt against the galaxy's most powerful ruler. But before Rex could pursue those thoughts further, the communication array activated again. Korath Station, we are detecting Imperial transponder signals from your facility. Confirm the status of any Imperial personnel in your custody immediately. Lyanna moved to the communication panel with decisive authority, her entire demeanor shifting to reflect the natural command presence that ruled an empire. Admiral Starweaver, this is Empress Lyanna Celestis. I am safe and well cared for. Prepare for standard retrieval protocols, but maintain formation discipline. I will not have Captain Morgan's station damaged by overzealous security measures. The silence that followed her transmission was profound, broken only by the hum of ship systems and what Rex could swear was the sound of an entire fleet's crew standing at attention simultaneously. Your Imperial Majesty, Admiral Starweaver's voice carried obvious relief mixed with military precision. Confirming your safety and status. Are you injured? Do you require immediate medical evacuation? I am in excellent health, thanks to Captain Morgan's skilled care and generous hospitality. I will require transport, but there is no medical emergency. As royal shuttles detached from the fleet to begin approach procedures, Lyanna turned back to Rex with an expression that mixed imperial authority with genuine warmth. I need you to understand something, Rex. The past few days have given me insights into frontier operations that I could never have gained through official channels. Your depot, your approach to customer service, your philosophy of helping others, these represent the best qualities of our frontier communities. Rex found his voice, though it came out as something approaching a croak. I'm honored that my service met your standards, Your Majesty. More than met them, Lyanna replied firmly. You've shown me what genuine hospitality looks like when it's offered without expectation of reward or recognition. That's a rare gift, Rex, and one that won't be forgotten. Through the viewports, Rex could see the approaching shuttles, craft whose elegant lines and defensive capabilities spoke of technology reserved for the most important passengers in the galaxy. Soon, his small depot would be filled with Imperial guards, advisors, and officials whose presence would transform his modest operation into the temporary center of galactic attention. But for these last few moments, it was still just him and Lyanna, sharing the quiet understanding that had developed between them over days of working together and conversations that had revealed more truth than either had initially intended. What happens now? Rex asked, gesturing toward the approaching royal entourage. Lyanna's smile was radiant with possibility and promise. Now, Captain Morgan, you discover that kindness offered freely to strangers in need can connect even the humblest depot operator to the highest powers in the galaxy. As the first royal shuttle prepared to dock at Korath Station, Rex realized that his simple life as a frontier supply operator had just become infinitely more complicated, and that sometimes, the most profound changes began with the smallest acts of human decency. The docking bay of Korath Station had never seen anything like the procession that emerged from the royal shuttles. Imperial guards in ceremonial armor that gleamed like captured starlight, advisors whose clothing cost more than Rex's annual revenue, and officials whose movements coordinated with the precision of a military operation. Rex stood frozen in his depot's main corridor, watching through the viewports as his modest facility was transformed into the temporary center of galactic power. Breathe, Rex, Lyanna said gently, though her own transformation was equally dramatic. The humble refugee he'd known for 4 days had vanished completely, replaced by someone who radiated natural authority and expectation of absolute obedience. They're here to serve, not to judge. The lead official, a tall Celestrian whose elongated ears were adorned with rank insignia that hurt to look at directly, approached with the kind of controlled urgency that suggested barely contained relief. "Your Imperial Majesty," he said, executing a bow so precise it appeared choreographed. Chancellor Valdris reporting. "The Empire has been mobilizing search efforts across 17 sectors. Your safety is our highest priority." "As it should be, Chancellor," Lyanna replied with calm authority. "But I want you to understand that Captain Morgan provided excellent care during my recovery. His depot operations are exemplary, and his personal conduct has been beyond reproach." Rex felt the weight of dozens of eyes studying him, guards assessing potential threats, advisors cataloging details for future reports, officials trying to understand how a simple frontier operator had come to shelter the galaxy's most powerful ruler. Their scrutiny was intense but not hostile. If anything, their expression suggested respectful curiosity about someone who had earned Imperial approval. "Captain Morgan," Chancellor Valdris addressed him directly, "the Empire is grateful for your assistance to Her Imperial Majesty. Your service will not be forgotten." "I just did what anyone would do," Rex managed, his voice sounding impossibly small in the presence of so much concentrated authority. "She needed help, so I provided it." The Chancellor's expression grew thoughtful at Rex's simple explanation. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should." "Indeed we should," Lyanna interrupted, moving toward Rex with a smile that carried both imperial dignity and genuine warmth. "Captain Morgan, I believe formal recognition of your service is in order." What followed was a ceremony that Rex would remember for the rest of his life, conducted in the humble confines of his depot with pomp and circumstance typically reserved for the grandest halls of galactic power. Lyanna, Empress Lyanna, spoke with eloquent gratitude about his kindness to a stranger, his skilled medical care, and his insights into frontier operations that had proven invaluable to her understanding of Outer Rim communities. "Your hospitality," she said, addressing Rex while her entire entourage listened with rapt attention, "represents the finest qualities of our frontier citizens. You offered assistance freely, without expectation of reward, and with genuine concern for the welfare of someone in need. These are the values that make our empire strong." Rex tried to process the surreal nature of receiving praise from galactic royalty while standing in his modest supply depot, surrounded by the inventory manifests that Lyanna had helped him organize just hours earlier. The contrast between the ordinary setting and the extraordinary circumstances threatened to overwhelm his ability to comprehend what was happening. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "I truly just did what felt right. You were injured and needed help. I couldn't have done otherwise. And that," Lyanna replied with a radiant smile, "is exactly why your actions are so significant. True character reveals itself not in moments of calculation, but in instinctive responses to others' needs." Chancellor Valdris stepped forward, producing a data tablet that glowed with official seals and Imperial authentication codes. "Captain Morgan, by order of Her Imperial Majesty, you are hereby granted the title of Friend of the Empire, with all attendant privileges and protections. Additionally, your depot operations qualify for preferential trading status throughout Imperial space." Rex stared at the formal documents appearing on the tablet's display, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of what was being offered. Friend of the Empire was a title granted perhaps once in a generation, carrying access to Imperial trade routes, protection under royal law, and economic opportunities that could transform his modest operation into a commercial enterprise of galactic significance. "I don't know what to say," he admitted honestly. "This is far beyond anything I could have imagined." "Say that you'll continue being exactly who you are," Lyanna replied. "The galaxy needs people like you, Rex, individuals who see others as beings worthy of care rather than potential sources of profit or advantage." As the Imperial entourage prepared for departure, Lyanna took a final tour of the depot that had been her refuge during the most vulnerable period she'd experienced in years. She paused at the medical bay where Rex had treated her injuries, the workstation where they'd optimized his inventory systems, and the viewport where they'd shared conversations about frontier philosophy and the importance of helping others. "You know," she said quietly, speaking just loudly enough for Rex to hear over the controlled chaos of imperial logistics, "in all my years of ruling, I've rarely encountered the kind of simple human kindness you showed me. Most people who interact with imperial authority do so with calculated motives." "I didn't know you were imperial authority," Rex pointed out with a slight smile. "Exactly. You helped me because I needed help, not because of what I could do for you in return. That distinction matters more than you realize." As the royal shuttles prepared for departure, their passenger compartments secured and departure protocols initiated, Lyanna made one final gesture that would ensure Rex's kindness rippled across the galaxy in ways he couldn't yet imagine. "Chancellor Valdris," she said with formal authority, "I want a full report prepared on Captain Morgan's depot operations, with particular attention to his customer service philosophy and inventory management innovations. Distribute it to all Imperial trade administrators as an example of best practices in frontier commerce." "It will be done, Your Majesty," the Chancellor replied, making notes on his official tablet. Rex felt overwhelmed by the scope of recognition being offered for what still felt like basic human decency. "Your Majesty, I don't think my little operation warrants that level of attention." "Let me be the judge of what warrants Imperial attention," Lyanna replied with gentle authority. Then, her voice softening to the tone he'd come to know during their conversations, she added, "Rex, what you created here isn't just a successful business, it's a demonstration that commerce and compassion can coexist. That's a lesson the galaxy needs to learn." As the Empress prepared to board her shuttle, she turned back one final time to address Rex directly. "I want you to know that the insights I gained here will influence Imperial policy toward frontier communities. Your example of principled service will help shape how we support Outer Rim operations throughout the Empire." The weight of that statement hit Rex like a shock wave. His simple philosophy of treating customers fairly and helping those in need was about to become a model for Imperial commerce policy affecting billions of beings across dozens of star systems. "I'm honored, Your Majesty. And humbled." "Be proud instead," Lyanna replied firmly. "You've earned recognition through character and competence, not politics or privilege. That makes you exactly the kind of citizen our empire needs to celebrate." As the royal shuttles lifted off from Korath Station, their elegant forms disappearing into the star field with the rest of the Imperial fleet, Rex stood alone in his depot surrounded by the lingering evidence of the most extraordinary week of his life. The formal documents granting him Friend of the Empire status glowed on his workstation, while new Imperial trade authorizations offered opportunities he was still trying to comprehend. But beyond the practical benefits of Imperial recognition, Rex found himself changed by the knowledge that simple kindness, offered freely to a stranger in need, could resonate across the galaxy in ways he'd never imagined. Lyanna, Empress Lyanna, had seen something in his approach to helping others that she considered worthy of Imperial attention, and that recognition validated a philosophy he'd followed instinctively rather than strategically. As normal operations resumed at Korath Station, Rex realized that while his circumstances had changed dramatically, his fundamental approach to serving others would remain the same. The frontier still needed people willing to offer assistance without judgment, and his depot would continue providing that service regardless of his new Imperial status. The difference now was that he understood the true scope of what kindness could accomplish when it connected the humblest hearts to the highest powers in the galaxy. Sometimes the most profound changes began with the smallest gestures of human decency, and sometimes the most powerful recognition came from simply doing what felt right when someone needed help. Outside his viewports, the stars shone with the same distant beauty they'd always possessed, but now Rex knew that among those points of light were worlds where his example of principled service would influence how beings treated each other in times of need. It was a responsibility he'd never sought but would carry with the same simple dedication that had earned it in the first place. In the end, he reflected, the greatest honor wasn't the imperial title or the trade privileges, it was knowing that Empress Lyanna had found in his modest depot exactly what she'd needed most, proof that genuine human kindness still existed in a galaxy that often seemed to reward only calculation and advantage. And sometimes, that proof was enough to change the universe, one act of kindness at a time.